what appears as chapter 1 in the book, it was a prologue, but my publishers don't like prologue, so they changed my prologue to chapter 1. Technical assistants are rushing up with a cup of water. And the situation is that Martha, like all the Doctor's companions, has complained about always being landed in danger and wants to go somewhere nice and peaceful and quiet. And the Doctor has promised to take her to the very place, and he takes her to England in the Edwardian age, in around sort of 1908. And as he says, the Boer War's safely over, and the First World War's still years away, and it's a sort of graceful, elegant climb. And they start off in. He starts off with a visit to Scotland, and then they're going to go down to London, and he takes her to Scotland to show her Balmoral Castle, and he's a bit baffled because he can't, when he lands at what he thinks should be a vantage point, he can't see it, but he thinks maybe he's a little bit out. Anyway, they set off for a walk through the heather to look for the castle. "My heart's in the Highlands, my heart is no here," sang the Doctor in a surprisingly good Scots accent. "My heart's in the Highlands a-hunting the deer." "You're not the only one," said Martha. She pointed. Clearly visible on a hillside just ahead, a young man was training his rifle on a noble stag which stood on the crest of a nearby hill. They saw the young man take aim. "Oi!" shouted Martha. The stag ran, the young man fired and missed. As the stag vanished over the other side of the hill, the young man rose. He came towards them, cradling the rifle in the crook of one arm. "You made me miss my shot," said the young man mildly. He didn't seem very annoyed. "Yeah, well, I don't approve of blood sports," said Martha firmly. The young man was slim and fair and slight in build. He wasn't much taller than she was herself, but he was, Martha suddenly realized, extremely handsome. He gave her a charming smile. "Not sure I approve of blood sports myself. He was very old, Stag, you know. He'll die soon anyway, perhaps in pain." "So you were doing him a favour?" Martha's tone made it very clear that she didn't believe it. "Well, no point in worrying about it now," said the Doctor quickly. "Allow me to introduce Miss Martha Jones, my ward. Where she comes from, they have no tradition of stag hunting. There aren't any stags. Tigers, yes, very touchy tigers. They hate being hunted." The young man bowed. "An honour to meet you, Miss Jones. To be honest, I'm not too bothered about missing the stag myself, but I'm afraid you've got me into trouble with my employer." Martha gave him a puzzled look. "How come?" "He sent me out this morning with orders to shoot a stag." Martha snorted. "Who does your boss think he is, giving orders like that? King of England?" The young man looked at her and smiled. "Actually, he does. And as a matter of fact, he is." Martha stared at him. "What are you on about? Are you saying you work for the king?" "I am, and I do. What's more, I think it's your duty to explain to His Majesty that you made me miss my shot. My life may depend on it." Martha looked horrified. "You're not serious. Doctor, he's not serious, is he?" "Very serious matter, disobeying the king," said the Doctor. "Could mean the Tower." "You're joking." Harry Carruthers grinned. "He's joking, don't worry. The most the old boy will do is pull my leg about being a rotten shot." The Doctor smiled. "I take it you're based at Balmoral?" Carruthers bowed. "Captain Harry Carruthers, aide to His Majesty King Edward VII. Dr. John Smith." Carruthers turned to Martha. "Tell you what, why don't you come back to Balmoral for lunch? I'll introduce you to His Majesty. He loves meeting new people, especially if they're attractive and female." He gave Martha an admiring look. "You'd better watch out, Martha," said the Doctor. One of His Majesty's popular nicknames is Edward the Caresser. Harry Carruthers laughed. Your ward will be safe enough, sir. At the moment, Lily Langtry and Mrs. Keppel are keeping him fully occupied. He turned to Martha. Will you accept? Oh, I don't know, said the doctor. Busy scheduled tour of the Highlands, trip to London. Wouldn't want to impose. Martha felt differently. Oh, come on, doctor, she said. How often do you get the chance to have lunch with a king? After a few more polite protests, they accepted the invitation. Right, come along then, said Carruthers. Allow me to lead the way. He set off down the path. As they followed, the doctor whispered, Quite often, actually. Quite often what? Asked Martha. Quite often I've lunched with the king. Henry VIII always put on a good spread. James I was surprisingly mean. And as for Alfred the Great, well, the venison stew was all right, but the cakes were terrible. Josh, said Martha. Not much further, said Carruthers over his shoulder. There's a good view of the castle when we get to the top of this next hill. He strode ahead, reached the top of the hill, and froze. No, he gasped. The doctor and Martha hurried to join him. Below them there should have been the splendid sight of Balmoral Castle, but there wasn't. Instead, there was a vast, oddly shaped area of bare earth, a shallow crater surrounded by gardens, fountains, and paths. The doctor and Martha looked at each other. Then, both speaking at once, they said one word. Jadoon. There we are. That's it. End of chapter 2.
Do you know, it's a pity to hear. It's a pity to hear Terence stop, isn't it? I could just keep listening, which just shows why it's a real page turner, doesn't it? It's fabulously well written.